Vengeance. Children of Faust, Part 1. Chapter 1. Final Days. A gentle murmur of mixed voices and whispers reverberated in the background of my fermented daydreams. Swimming in the whirlwind of distant realities, I clouded my mind, afraid to fight my inner thoughts, as I may soon forget them entirely. Tapping my pencil against the desk grounded my body in this world while my subconscious roamed free. The vacancy in my eyes was plain to see, though nobody would offer their gaze. My body rested in the same place as every time before, propped upright at a familiar desk, bombarded by perpetual white noise of a rowdy classroom. My vacant eyes went unaffected by their incessant chatter. However, intuition built by repetition slowly revived me from my mental wandering. The pencil froze, and my dry eyes slammed shut. In a matter of seconds, the noise floor raised, and I was back in the world I knew, the world I hated. I sighed, brushing aside the hair that had fallen in front of my eyes. A searing headache erupted as I grew increasingly frustrated with the noise around me. My glare shifted to the teacher, who had her feet propped on an extra chair and was reading a book. I twisted my torso and checked the clock on the wall behind me. 2 minutes to go. I reached down to the floor and set my bag on the flat surface, unzipping the largest pocket. One by one, I returned daily items and zipped it back up, now resting the bottom on my lap and digging my chin on the top. Breathing lightly through my nose, I noticed a reduction in the chatter directly to my right, but only for a moment. As soon as I heard it, it struck me. Something round and lightweight bounced off the side of my head and gently clattered to the floor. I directed my eyes to the wad of paper as I came to a rolling halt. My face was blank as I dragged my weary eyes up at them. A group of boys huddled around a single desk all looked away from my saddened gaze, holding back their amused snickers and trying to hush each other. It's only Tuesday, I thought. The monotone bell rang and suddenly noise turned to animation. Every classroom and the vacant hall was simultaneously alerted to the advancement of time. Applying unnecessary pressure to cram ourselves through the narrow doorways, fight every other kid for a path in the hall, just to lock ourselves in a small room and do it once more. The chair I sat in for the past 45 minutes was hit with recoil as I jumped up and flung my bag over my shoulder in one smooth motion. In a matter of seconds, the hallway flooded with other students, and brought with them the task of swift maneuverability. The familiar stench of floor wax and hand sanitizer floated freely throughout the building, creating an accustomed coziness within me. The best way to cut through was to act as a thin projectile in the halls. Tense up, bring your arms in close, and wade through the bodies. Easy enough. I do it every single day. Bobbing and weaving, I made my way around 2 sharp corners, then the hall opened up. A long and wide passageway mostly consisted of lockers and posters taped to the concrete walls. Before me was a sea of relatively plain colors, mostly gray polos or plaid shirts paired with blue jeans and khaki shorts. A stout breath of confidence, and I trudged forward. My next class was at the far end, and to anyone else, it was a simple trek. Not for me. Never for me. To my surprise, it started out smoothly. The first quarter of the hall was behind me, and an open pocket of students allowed for a more direct course. I felt the anticipation of an ending day, the conflicting emotions of freedom and waiting solitude. For a moment, I allowed thoughts of the after to fill my head and distract me. I stupidly let my guard down, and right away it became clear why the hall had opened up. A trap. From my left came a burst of ice water. Hard cubes impacted my face while biting cold soaked everything on that side. My eyes shut and my footing staggered. Before I could even open my mouth to shout, another wave of wet impacted my right side. I had stopped moving entirely, arms wide and fingers gnarled, while all of my hair, face, and shirt were completely soaked through. My lips sputtered as I blew water from my mouth. A blur stood in front of me, an unmistakable shape. Are you I was abruptly cut off by another splash from the front, but it wasn't water this time. I could hear the peal of laughter from some and the shocked gasps from others. I stumbled a step, completely taken aback by the shivering cold and sudden suffocation. I quickly wiped across both my eyes and lips, gathering a dense clump of something coarse under each fingertip. Yeesh, that looked like it sucked. Her mocking voice penetrated the gunk caught in my ears. I cautiously opened my eyes again, and through the powder stuck in my eyelashes, I saw the only person in this whole school who would go out of their way to make my life miserable for any fickle reason. She was slightly taller and slender. She wore large silver hoop earrings that perfectly complemented her thick, blonde ponytail and delicately trimmed bangs. Her shoulder was only slightly burdened by the dense leather purse, which, no doubt, carried enough makeup to stock a vanity table and constantly refresh the mask she wore. She was gorgeous, but beauty is only skin deep with her. Stacy Kingston. "What the hell was that for?" I retched. I desperately swiped the crud off my face and flung it to the floor, coughing as what I now determined to be flour formed a cloud around my head and shot into my lungs. To my left and right were two other girls that I knew only in association with Stacy. They were holding now empty plastic cups and sneering deviously. Behind them were the complacent students who had separated to let this go down. Some covered their mouths, while others just walked away now that the main event was over. Embarrassed and furious, I bore my teeth and balled my fists. "I can't believe you! Can I just have one day without your bullshit?" She clicked her tongue. "If I left you alone for a day, I'd never complete my list by the end of the year. I stayed up late coming with creative ways to mess with you." She chuckled. The makeup around her eyes perfectly emboldened the superior glare. I adjusted my footing and nearly slipped on the puddled water. Locked in place as a center of attention, I felt the heat in my body rise. My throat swelled with anger, knuckles white with pressure, and 1,000 other memories like this begging me to lash out. But I didn't. In my head, I stomped toward her and gave her a good punch in the teeth. Knocked her to the floor and peeled some of this crap off my face and plastered it onto hers. But in reality, my shoulders slumped, and I was crying. I don't know if it was the sadness or the rage, but whatever it was took over and left me weak. Pathetic. Stacy covered her mouth as her expression lit up. "Really, Kim? You're crying over this?" She laughed, and a few others joined. Most of the crowd dispersed after the initial punchline. After all, they had to get to class. But the few that stayed were fully invested in the moment. And now they got their payoff. It's only Tuesday, and she already broke me down. I could feel their judging stares, the mockery, the nicknames forming in their heads. My hands were trembling, skin cold and soul distant. Their collective amusement simply boiled to a single point and became mute. I swallowed hard and attempted my first step to escape, but she moved in my way. Where do you think you're going? Let me see that dog face." She upturned her pointer finger beneath my chin and used her stick-on nail to angle my face up. My jaw trembled and my bloodshot eyes squinted with flour still stuck in them. I glared into the piercing brown eyes and saw nothing but satisfaction. I know what she wanted from me. She always gets it. She always asks for an apology. She has never explained what I'm apologizing for, but it's the only way she lets me out of the situation. I felt the drying muck flake away as my mouth opened slightly. Sorry." She smirked. Good. Then she looked past me. "Lynn, why don't you refill your cup at the fountain so we can give the dog a bath? She stinks." The girl nodded and started a light jog down the hall where I came from. Stacy's arm dropped at her side, but my head stayed partially raised. Then, a shot of adrenaline entered my veins and I felt an uncontrollable urge seize me. I flapped my head side to side as fast as I could, coating her with layered flour dust and wet, chunky spackles. She yelped and reared slightly with a shocked expression as I smirked and pushed past her. "Get her!" she shouted, but none of the students in my way did anything to stop me. Her two assistants, however, started a mad dash after me, Lynn having to cover twice the distance. My backpack bounced and slipped from my shoulders as I careened down the hallway. The last door on my right was my next class, but directly across from it was a single-stall bathroom. I reached it and attempted to stop, but the wetness of my shoes caused me to skid. Luckily, I was faster than two prissy middle schoolers in dress shoes and was able to pry the door open and enter, locking it behind me. Panting, I pressed my back to the painted green door and swung my arm to hit the light switch. They arrived a few seconds later and started pounding the door. "Kimberly, get your ass out here," one called, her voice shrill and lacking authority. "Get bent," I shouted back. They jostled the handle for a few seconds, then suddenly stopped. I held my breath, listening to the quiet clacking of their shoes just outside. Then I felt a heavy presence. I can't explain it, but it was almost like I could feel Stacy's raw anger in my bones. I pulled myself away from the door and faced it. She muttered, "That was a mistake." I had no response, and it seemed like they were done for now. My heart rate slowly decelerated, and I was able to drop my guard again. My muscles ached with tautness. Head low, eyes burning, I positioned myself in front of the torso-high mirror above the sink and felt shame all over again. That's me. The coward, the weakling. I just stared into my own eyes, the sky blue wobbling and growing wetter with every passing second as my emotions sank once more. Screw you, I grumbled, not sure if that was directed at me or Stacy. I cranked both sink knobs and cupped my hands under the stream. The water slapped and splashed in the porcelain sink, creating a barrier of noise I submit to. The buzz of fleeting anger in my skull grounded me in the world again, as lonely quiet ushered my movements, splashing my face and using my wet hands to scrape flour from my hair. I bent down and jammed my head under the water as much as I could and rustled the dry clumps, until they broke away and went down the drain. I pulled away and braced my palms against the edge of the sink, now able to see my face completely. My slightly rounded jaw and pessimistic gaunt were crudely outlined by sticky wet hair, flat, unlike its usual waves and curls. Although, seeing it like this outside my morning shower did spark an interest in buying a hair straightener. Then again, having my hair straight would make it reach past my shoulders, and I don't know how I'd feel about that. It hasn't been that long since I was a child. A heavy sigh, and I reached for the paper towels to dry. Her gleaming face haunted me, and all at once I felt the heat caress the back of my neck. My ears felt clogged, and I could almost hear chattering close by. Maybe some students were lingering in the hallway. I shut the water off and listened. There was a faint whispering, somehow right outside the door, and also at the far end of the hallway. I don't know how to explain it. I turned away from the mirror and looked around, but for some reason it sounded like whoever was in the hall was also right next to me. I groaned and continued to wipe my hair and face. Fuck it, I'm just gonna wait here, I declared to no one. This wouldn't be the first time Stacy or her brother waited for me to leave the bathroom to strike, and not the first time I waited almost through an entire class just to be safe. They won't get me again. So, I waited. For 20 minutes, I persistently wiped as much as I could with dry, thin paper towels until I felt normal enough. After that, I pressed the crumpled trash deeper into the bin and positioned myself against the wall, leaning with my arms folded over my chest. It was so quiet, so barren. It didn't feel like just outside these walls were people with beating hearts and minds of their own, more like a collective construct to convince me of some fickle reality, a dream. Suddenly, a knock on the door shook me from my mental wandering. I ignored it, readjusting my legs and shifting balance. They knocked again. "Occupied," I said in a low drawl. "Kim?" A muffled male voice vibrated the door. My brows angled, and I pulled myself from the wall, instantly recognizing the pitch. Cautious, I took hold of the handle and pulled it inward, only enough to peer out a crack. When I saw him, all that angst and vitriol evaporated. His clothes were so baggy that he could fit at least 2.5 more of his skinny clones in there with him. An appearance of general disinterest was complete with his 2 signature articles of clothing. His typical dark beanie, which covered his medium-length dirty blonde hair, and a tattered black leather jacket with red inner lining. That signature hat and hair complemented the shape of his smooth ankled jawline and soft cheekbones. No feature, not even his cute button nose, could distract from his warming, bright blue eyes. He shrugged his shoulders uncomfortably, seeing me defensive behind the safety of a thick bathroom door. So many things jumped to mind upon seeing him, but I settled on simply, "Hey, Joey." He held up a pink ruler with a neon sticker at the top, a hall pass. "I heard about what happened and came to find you." Skeptical, I left the door open a little more. "Who told you?" Everyone seemed complacent while she just had her fun. Needy was in the back, I guess. He split to find me, but I was outside playing soccer. My eyes lowered, disconnected entirely. Disgrace wormed its way under my skin again and left me feeling small. A pestering silence pervaded the air, leaving us both somber at the other's company. He spoke. "I'm sorry I didn't get here to stop her. Are you okay?" I released the door handle and let it creak open halfway, revealing myself fully to him. Hair and shirt still damp, cheeks red with emotion. "Not the worst thing she's done this year," I said sorrowfully. His other hand slipped from his pocket and lingered at his side. "Unprovoked as usual?" "Of course. When do I ever provoke her?" "Nah, you're not confrontational enough. Though sometimes I wish you were," he snickered. I smirked. Well, she called me Dogface again, so I shook off in front of her. Played my part, but not the way she wanted. I peered up at him through my drying bangs, and a big grin split across his face. "Hell yeah, that's what I like to hear." His attitude shifted. Now he was in surrogate big brother mode. "You want to borrow my hat for the rest of the day?" I scoffed. "You and that dumb hat. I'm half tempted to wear it just so I can see your hair again. You look better without it." "You know what? Never mind," he laughed. I stared a little too long at his face. "Thanks for checking on me, Joey. I appreciate it." His lower lip curled. I wish I was here when it went down. I would have put a stop to it real quick. God, what's her problem? Seriously, she never gives you a break. Who knows? She's the only one who's kept it up since grade school. Guess I'm lucky to have a threat to keep me on my toes. "Have you tried going to the principal again?" I frowned. "I did last month. He said he'd handle it." He shook his head, which means fuck all. Yeah, especially when her dad is close friends with the principal. It's pointless. I just gotta keep my head down and try to avoid her most days. Or you could stand up to her and make her stop. Sucker punch her in the face and stomp her throat. He grimaced, radiating vile anger I sympathized with. My brow raised. That's a bit intense for you. Sorry, I got action movies on the brain. He relaxed. I don't actually mean you should beat her up, but something, you know? Yeah, I frowned harder. The ruler in his hand caught my eye. You should get back to class. I don't want you getting in trouble. Nah, I don't plan on going back. I gotta make sure you're okay. I'm fine, I said unconvincingly. What if she comes back? He argued. It's last period. She won't. I don't want to leave you either way. His tone shifted, heavy and saturated. I noticed and gave him a more endearing look. He continued, I haven't talked to you in over a week, Kim. I started to think you were avoiding me. My mouth went dry, and a tickle under my eyes tempted sadness. My body shifted to the side, now putting him in my right peripheral with my back to the mirror. A dense cloud of apathy swelled in my skull as little inklings of us jostled. I was, I admitted. I felt him deflate. Oh. Immediately, his spirit thinned, and I knew he wanted to back away. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. It's me, not you. Anxiety wriggled angrily in my chest. Calcified memories I continued to bury resurfaced and surged my fingertips with rumbling static. You didn't do anything. I just can't be around you most days. Kim, he whispered, the past will always be the past. I'm not bitter about how things happened. I just want to be your friend again. I couldn't look at him. The door was being held open by my foot, so when the emotions I subdued started overpowering my will, I pulled it away and let the creaking hinges pull it closed. It shut with an echoing clunk, and my throat warbled with a pained breath. We both waited on either side, holding our breaths for the other to speak, but no one did. It hurt me to put up a wall, but I have to. He's right. The past is the past, but it doesn't justify my actions. I can't let the memories go. He is forever a part of me. So much of my life was built by the things he taught me. The days he spent looking after me, and the words he offered which brought me back to life. He is precious, but painful. With every good memory, he brings a horrid reminder of the past and how much things have changed. How much I have continued to let him and everyone down. There was nothing more I wanted right now than to scream at the top of my lungs. Belt out 10 years of repressed anger and hatred for myself and others. Every curse to my face left a bruise that mirrored the ones hidden beneath my sleeves. All the electric discourse I created with the few I can trust serves only to deepen the self-inflicted scars. He just wouldn't understand how I feel, how much I miss him, and can't allow that notion to succeed. One day, I will speak. Tell the world my story, my struggle. Perhaps they will cast me aside once more, ever dismissive of my little ball of misery I call life. Or maybe they will hold my heart in their hands and cry, shed tears of regret, begging for amnesty. It had been minutes, and still I felt his presence. I sniffled and shivered, feeling cold again. Slowly, I lowered myself to the floor and leaned my back against the door, knees raised to my chest and chin resting on top. The hum of the overhead light kept me tethered, and the pressure of his quiet form was the oil to the flame that kept the darkness at bay. Somehow, I knew. I could see him in my mind. He was sitting just like me. Our backs pressed with the door between us, sharing idle reminiscence and wishing that things could be different.